Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Now the Day is Over. I want to encourage you to like and to share this video so that others like you can read the text, study with us, and learn something that can be applied into their lives. I hope that this is an encouragement to many people. I'm thankful that we were able to finish the book of Genesis yesterday, and I am so excited to be able to start the book of Exodus with you tonight. And I hope that you were able to do the reading and that you are ready to learn and you are ready to be encouraged. You know, the book of Exodus tells the story of God's chosen people who are delivered from slavery through the prophet Moses, God's deliverer. It tells of Israel's 40-year journey through the desert on the way to the promised land. In this book, we will find the giving of the Ten Commandments and the detailed instructions for the building of the tabernacle of God. You know, the title of this book in the Hebrew Bible is, are you ready for this? These are the names. And if you remember, the way that the Hebrews named their books is that they would use the first few words of the text to give it the name. And so like the book of Genesis, in the beginning, we find that it has the name Genesis, which means origin. Here we have that we've adopted the Septuagint name for this book. Now, the Septuagint is the Greek translation of the Hebrew text, and it gives this book, these are the names, the title, The Exodus, which means the way out. And it is a wonderful theme for the entire book of Exodus. Now, this book, like the other first 5 books of the Old Testament, was written by Moses around 1440 to 1400 BC and is divided up into 40 chapters. Today, our reading and devotional comes from the first 3 chapters. In Exodus chapter 1, it begins with a list of names of the sons of Israel who returned to Egypt, where Joseph was already residing. Their offspring were great in number. In fact, Jacob alone was responsible for 70 children. Now that's a lot of diaper changes and a lot of runny noses and a lot of ball games to get to. Can you imagine getting 70 kids ready for Sunday morning Bible class? Wow! Kira and I struggle with our 2 kids. I can imagine 70. Now, as we continue reading on in the first few verses, we find that Joseph and his generation eventually just passed away. However, the Hebrew presence in Egypt grew profoundly as the years passed by. It got so much to the point where the Egyptians were fearful of being outnumbered. And reading further into Exodus chapter 1, we find that Moses skips ahead about 360 years to a time when there was a new Pharaoh over Egypt. But this Pharaoh did not know anything about Joseph. But he was very much aware of the number of Hebrews that were in his land. Early in his reign, he proclaimed to the Egyptian people that they must be wise in their association with the people of Israel, or they would join with the opposition forces if a conflict occurred. And so Pharaoh's solution to dealing with them was to control them through hard labor led by taskmasters, basically put them into slavery. This included their participation in many of the building of the pyramids of Egypt. But undaunted by this situation, the number of the Israelites continued to grow, which gives us a great point that when God's people are oppressed, when God's people are persecuted, God's people grow. We find that same kind of thought in the book of Acts. When the church was persecuted, the church grew. And I'm hoping that when we, as the church today, find ourselves being persecuted or being oppressed, that really what we do is we grow even more. And if we keep with the theme of God's people, that's exactly what we'll do. So don't be so discouraged when we're being persecuted. It might just be an opportunity for God's people to grow. Now, back to Exodus. Pharaoh was at his wit's end regarding to how to control this Hebrew population. And so he called 2 midwives to him, and he ordered them to kill all the Hebrew newborns. However, these 2 midwives were more fearful of God than they were of Pharaoh, and they did not carry out his plan. When Pharaoh confronted them about their lack of compliance, they claimed that the Hebrew women were strong and energetic, and they gave birth quickly without the midwives' assistance. Can you imagine? The plan was to kill the babies right after they were born. Wow. Exodus chapter 1 concludes with Pharaoh demanding that all Egyptians be on the lookout for male newborn babies. If the people were aware of a son being born to any Hebrew woman, they were required to drown the baby in the Nile River immediately. How cruel. How immoral. Chapter 2 begins with the birth of Moses, a Hebrew newborn male baby. Due to Pharaoh's decree, Moses' mother, Jochebed is her name, had to hide Moses so that he would not be killed with the other newborn males. And so she hid him for 3 months to protect him from the Egyptians. But when hiding him was no longer possible, she put him in a covered basket and placed it at the bank of the Nile River. Now the baby's sister, Miriam, watched him from afar to see what would occur next. And in my opinion, through the providence of God, the daughter of Pharaoh chose to bathe that day and spotted the basket right away in the river. And as she inspected it, she was astonished to find this child who appeared to be of Hebrew descent. But you know what? She took pity upon the crying infant. And after witnessing these things, Miriam, Moses' sister, rushed to Pharaoh's daughter and offered to bring a Hebrew nurse to care for him. This nurse, of course, was Moses' own mother, Jochebed. Now, God works things out, doesn't he? It's amazing. Pharaoh's daughter advised Jochebed that if she agreed to care for the baby, she would be paid for her efforts. So she got a job and her baby back out of the deal. Exodus chapter 2 continues with Moses being raised by Pharaoh's daughter in his palace, and she named him Moses, which is of an Egyptian name meaning out of the water. She raised him to adulthood, knowing the whole time that he was a Hebrew. And I think Moses even realized that as well. Now, when Moses was 40 years old, that's my age now, he went to view the many Hebrew laborers who were working in the land. And he encountered an Egyptian beating one of them. And so he jumped in, I think, out of pity and mercy. He wanted to intervene here because it was his own people. He jumped into that situation and he actually killed the Egyptian. And he didn't know if anyone else saw him until the next day when he noticed 2 Hebrew men fighting each other. When he questioned them as to why they were fighting, one of them told Moses that he should not judge him. The man then asked if Moses intended to kill them like he killed the Egyptian the day before. And that's when Moses realized that they had seen him kill a person the day before. When Moses heard that Moses killed an Egyptian, Moses was forced to flee to a city called Midian. And while he was there, Moses met the daughters of the priest of Midian and assisted them in extracting water from a well. After learning about Moses' kind deed, the priest Reuel offered the hand of one of his daughters to Moses. They got married and they had a baby, a male child. They named him Gershom. Chapter 3 in the book of Exodus, here we learn an important episode in the life of Moses. While he was on a mountain, God spoke to him through a burning bush. However, this is so amazing to me. Even though the bush was on fire, it was not consumed. What a sight to see. Now, I've seen some fires before, but I've never seen something be on fire and that fire not consume it. You know God is there. Matter of fact, God was there, and God told Moses to remove his sandals because where he was standing was on holy land. And so Moses was afraid to look at the Lord, and so he hid his face down, he removed his sandals. God told Moses that he was aware that his people were going through hardship in Egypt. And he told Moses that he wanted him to save them, to deliver them. the Lord asked Moses to lead them out of Egypt and take them to another land where they would be happy and where they would be safe. And this land was described as one which flowed with milk and honey. To be able to do this, God told Moses that he should go to Pharaoh to request freedom. But Moses felt unworthy in going before Pharaoh with this request. He also asked God, "How should I answer the people of Israel when they ask me who sent him to save them?" God replied that he should answer, "I am who I am." This is the Hebrew word Yahweh, which means I am, obviously. Or as we would say, He is. And that is a perfect description or name for God. Why? Because He is. He exists. He was, He is, and He ever shall be. I am. Now, in the Latin, this word Yahweh is translated to be Jehovah. Or the way we translate it now, Lord God. Exodus chapter 3 concludes with God telling Moses that he would smite the land of Egypt so that Pharaoh would have to let them go. He also said that the Egyptian women will shower the Israelites with expensive gifts such as precious metals and fine clothing. These valuables, he said, were to be given to their children. God had a great plan of deliverance to bring His people out of oppression and out of slavery. And here's our application tonight. God has a plan for you too. A plan of deliverance to bring you out of the oppression and the slavery of sin. What a great beginning to an adventurous book. Tomorrow, I want to encourage you, read Exodus chapter 4 through 6. I love you, and good night.